Welcome, everyone. I'm Brian Reynolds, the Chancellor with the Archdiocese of Louisville. We're glad you could join us for our podcast series, What's New in ArchLou. This show highlights the people and ministries of the Archdiocese, the Catholic Church in Central Kentucky. Join us each month as we welcome guests to discuss our local church and invite you to get more involved as you deepen your own commitment to your Catholic faith. This program is brought to you by the ArchLou Podcast Network. Well, folks, we made it to June. That was the longest May we've had in a long time. You know, a great opportunity. We had to welcome our new Holy Father, Pope Leo XIV. But so many things go on in May. Starts with Derby, and then we end up with Mother's Day, and then we end up with 700 different First Communions and weddings and events, and end up closing out the month, but we're still celebrating Pope Leo. So glad you could be with us. Pope Leo can't be here, but we have a really special guest. We're happy to welcome back Lisa DeJaco Crutcher. Lisa has been the Chief Executive Officer for Catholic Charities of Louisville since 2017. I can't believe it's been that long.
I know, it's hard to believe.
Her background is in actually practicing law. She's a sixth-generation Louisvillian. She and her husband, Mark, and their two children are parishioners of St. Agnes. So, Lisa, before we get into our topic of today, that was a little introduction. What else can you tell us about yourself?
Well, you've really hit the high points there already. I've lived in Louisville most of my life. I was away for college and away for law school, but other than that, this has been my home. I have had the opportunity, both when I was a lawyer and now as the Chief Executive at Catholic Charities, to be involved in a whole lot of different things and to see a whole lot of different sides of our city. And so I'm really happy to be here to talk a little bit about what we have going on.
We know you as a member of our leadership team in the Archdiocese, but I have to tell you, you're right. Everywhere you go, people know you, who you are, and they also know the DeJaco name, of course, which
That's
is
right.
a family
It stands
name too.
out. So my kids think I'm famous because I'm on the cover of the Record sometimes.
That's great.
I'm Catholic famous. That's all.
Catholic famous. That's very good. Okay. Thanks for sharing that. The first time you were on our show was in December of 23. Catholic Charities was preparing to build a new headquarter building and move to a facility on Broadway. I'm excited to share that you've been in the new building now for over a year. Tell us what that move was like and what that's all about.
Oh, we are so glad that we are located in this new space. It's really been wonderful. We did have a little bit of a roof leak the other day, so that made us feel right at home from our old buildings where we were constantly dealing with mechanical issues and roof problems and everything else. But the new space has really been great, just in terms of having a clean and respectful work environment, both for the staff and for the clients that we serve. We've been able to accommodate almost all of our programs are located there at that building, and that means that we're able to assist our clients all in one place, which is helpful for anybody who needs to come to us for assistance. It makes it easier for them. We're on a major bus line. TARC goes right down Broadway. Even on some of the projections for TARC on their more consolidated service, will still be on a major bus line, making it easy for people to get to us. And it's just a nice atmosphere. You know, there's always something happening. There's people coming in and out all the time, and it just feels good.
But the amount of rain we had back in May, I'm not surprised you had a roof leak. But, you know, when you hear about storms and so forth, and we had more than our share this past few months, people think about a refuge. Well, that's what Catholic Charities is. You're a space, but you're also a people, and you're also services. And I know that there are 7 themes of Catholic social teaching that provides the foundation of Catholic Charities work, and you've incorporated them into your building. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so we're delighted to be able to showcase the 7 themes of Catholic social teaching, not just in the work that we're doing, but physically in the space that we have. There's 2 different places in the building. On the bottom floor of the building, where we have a lot of classrooms, we actually have some artwork that reflects the Catholic social teachings. It's a wonderful sort of folk art style by an artist, a religious brother named Mickey McGrath. And so those are really great. And then on the main floor, in a room that we use for public gatherings of all kinds, we had this one really long wall that needed to be filled up. And it looks wonderful now. It's in stripes of different colors, each one with a different one of the themes of Catholic social teaching and some great explanation about what that means. Deacon Scott Hayner, the deacon out at St. Patrick Church, is the former chair of our board and the chair of our capital committee, and he took on getting that done for us. And I just think it looks wonderful. We're so thankful to him that it reflects, I think, so nicely right there in the physical center of what we do. The emotional, moral, spiritual center of what we do is also right there highlighted.
Well, obviously the church is known around the country, around the world, as a places for worship, and in this community we're well known for schools, both essential ministries. But the social mission of the church is the heart of the church, and we're glad for what you and your colleagues do every day. Let's talk about some of those work areas, because there's a lot of them, and I don't know how many we'll get in this show, but let's do a couple of them. We talked in the past about this, and let's do it again. The important work of Catholic Charities Migration and Refugee Services. In the past, you would do everything from greeting families who would arrive at the airport and work with them to adjust their life to their new home, and all that involved in that. Tell us about Migration and Refugee Services, please.
Absolutely. So this is a program that we've been operating in Catholic Charities of Louisville for 50 years. We have one of the largest and strongest refugee resettlement programs in the country here in Louisville. And you're right, we do everything from greeting people at the airport who have come, who the State Department have hand-selected overseas, people who are in refugee camps that are run by the United Nations, people who have been forced to flee their homeland. Nobody wants to become a refugee, right? It's always in response to either a natural disaster or more often some kind of civil strife that's happening in their homeland. People are forced to flee. Many of them spend years and years in refugee camps before eventually deciding to accept the offer for resettlement, which is intended to be a permanent relocation. You're giving up your hope of returning to your homeland, and you're taking this opportunity to start a new life somewhere else. So refugees are sort of the quintessentially legal immigrants because they've been screened intensely. There's a 2 or 3 year screening process that happens for those folks after they've already gone through a bunch of red tape with the United Nations. The State Department books them on their flights to come to the United States, and they're on a legal path to citizenship from the minute that they step foot on that first plane. And once they get to the community where they'll be resettled, they're greeted by a resettlement agency like Catholic Charities, which takes all the necessary steps to help them get acclimated and assimilated into their new community. So in the beginning, that means helping set up an apartment, getting adults employed, getting kids enrolled in school, getting English as a second language for those who need it. But it goes beyond those initial days of service. Refugees are entitled to 2 to 5 years of service, depending on their circumstances. And those longer-term services include English as a second language, workforce, moving people not just into work, but hopefully into a second or third job that may give them more of an opportunity to develop, make use of their skills once they're becoming acclimated to life in a Western economy. Youth services as well. We have a big youth mentoring program. We work with kids, not to the extent that anybody who has a high schooler may feel a little bit at sea these days in terms of what they need to know or how to get them off to college, but that's especially true for somebody who came here as a child, as a refugee, and whose parents have never had any kind of experience with the American education system. So, we work with those kids to figure out, do they want to go to college? Is trade school a better choice? How can we get these young people to make it the opportunity to have their full potential here as part of our society, because these folks are going to become our new citizens.
Well, and they have some amazing stories, as I've gotten to know many of them over the years. And some who, as you said, they were in refugee camps for years waiting for this opportunity. Some of them gave up lucrative professions. There's a person who was here who was doing manual labor, but he had been a physician in his former country. We have a member of your own staff who's now retired who came here. He was a fighter pilot in the South Vietnamese military.
Yes.
And he was working on your staff. Amazing stories. To imagine moving to a country where you know nobody, know no language, never been here. You saw it in a travel magazine. And you have to learn a language, get a job, find a place to live. You often have family with you or not. And wow, what a life.
It's an incredible upheaval, and that's one reason why so many of our Catholic Charities staff who work in this program are themselves folks who came through the refugee process. In some cases as children, in some cases as adults. I know the retired employee that you're thinking of, I'm thinking of another one, our former Director of Programs, Darko Mihailovic, who came as a refugee after having run a successful business in Bosnia at the time of the Bosnian Civil War. He lived through the Civil War and all of the upheaval there, and then came here to the United States and started off taking a job in our refugee resettlement program. Well, he had an MBA. He didn't stay just doing the driving in the job that he had in the first place. He ended up running the resettlement program and then eventually running all of our programs. And that's actually really common. The numbers on refugees are really impressive. They start businesses at a higher rate than native-born Americans. Typically, this is an investment for the U.S. government. So it does take money up front, obviously, to bring people here, get them settled. But the longer you look at the time horizon, the more and more money the government makes back over that initial investment in tax dollars, because they're all working.
Remind me, if you know the statistic without notes, tell me the time from they're here to getting a job is very short. Is it for adults, right?
Typically, we have employable adults, which means anybody between 18 and 65 is typically employed between 60 to 90 days.
Wow.
Which is amazing. As you said, no English. In many cases, no experience with a Western economy, but almost everybody is immediately getting to work. And then they're coming to us trying to find a second job. Is there something else I can be doing besides this? Because these folks are here to work and to build a new life. They did not claw their way through the refugee camp and these miles of red tape and get themselves out of the terrible situation in their homeland in the first place to just, sit back and relax. These people are dedicated and determined.
I know in the last 50 years how much Louisville has changed dramatically culturally, in a large part because of the different cultural groups who've relocated here through programs of Catholic Charities and related things like that. I was laughed 35 years ago when I was first doing this work here. We had Mass in English. Now we have Mass in 8 different languages, many of which are people who are here, Catholics, because they came from another country and settled here with their families. And so Mass in all sorts of languages now is part of that.
Absolutely. And that's exactly right. In the first years of this program, in the late 70s and early 80s, we were resettling a lot of folks from Southeast Asia, a lot of Vietnamese and Cambodians. And as you know, we have a sizable Vietnamese community here, a Vietnamese Catholic community here in Louisville. And then, through the years, we had the Bosnians in the early 90s, and then it moved through Somali and Sudanese and Bhutanese communities. The Congolese, in recent years, we've had a significant number of Congolese come to Louisville, and many of those folks are Catholic as well, and they're typically attending Mass in French or even now in Swahili. And throughout that time period, really, the Cubans, which is another huge story here in Louisville. We have a very sizable Cuban community. And so that has also been due to the work that we've done at Catholic Charities over the last 50 years.
Now, whenever we talk about migration or refugee work, there's always a little bit of a shadow because people hear these words and they mix it up with other things that have gone on. Right now we're dealing with, the agency's dealing with federal budget cuts that had a lot more to do with things that were happening at the border of the country, which is not the same program we're talking about here. But these things all get connected. And our brothers and sisters who come over the border in any circumstance still need our care. But tell me a little bit about what's going on here, Lisa. Help us sort through this maze of confusion.
Yeah, and thank you for asking that, because I do think it's important for people to know. Sometimes in news coverage, people will talk about refugees at the border, but just in a legal term, as far as the sort of nonprofit world is concerned, refugees are specifically people who've come through this legal channel, who've come specifically after a significant amount of screening has been done, and they've been, as I said earlier, selected to come into the U.S. So that's a different situation, and those are the folks who are receiving these federal benefits to get themselves started. As opposed to other folks who, of course, we want to serve anybody who needs help. But the benefits in particular that we have always provided, those are not provided to anyone who doesn't qualify for that refugee status. In terms of refugees themselves, we're no longer seeing new arrivals. That was a decision made by the presidential administration on day one, that they would halt new refugee arrivals. And I think it's our expectation that that's unlikely to change anytime in the near future. And so we are no longer doing the work that we have historically done around welcoming new arriving refugees to town. But even so, we continue to do the work that we have always been doing for those longer term services. That's a congressionally funded program, and we continue to have funds for that, at least for the time being. It's unclear what will go forward in the next few years, but at least for now, we're continuing to provide those workforce development services, the youth services, English as a second language, all of those sort of longer term services that we have provided.
I think you said from when they get here, there's some of them qualify for services for 3 to 5 years.
Yes, that's
right. So all that work is still going on, even though you have no new groups coming.
Absolutely. In the last few years, we've resettled a significant number of folks. So just in this federal fiscal year, which started in October, from October 1st through January 20th, we resettled over 250 people here in Louisville. So those folks are going to be entitled to services until at least the fall of 2026, if not beyond.
Yeah, okay. Now, related work in the agency is what's called your immigration legal services. Tell me what that is.
Yeah, so this is a program that we began in order to respond to the needs of our refugee population. As I said earlier, those folks are on a legal path to citizenship from the minute they get on the plane, but there's still steps that they need to take and papers that they need to file. And in addition, for many of them, a really high priority is family reunification. So once they're here and established, they're able to petition for their own family members who remain overseas in their home country, just in the same way that anyone who's here within the U.S. can petition for their family members to join them. And so this is a program that we started to meet the needs of our refugee clients, and which has grown to meet the needs of some of our other program clients, like our anti-human trafficking program. Frequently there are folks there who have immigration legal needs, but also to meet the needs of the community. And so, anyone in the community who is interested in finding out more about their own legal status, if they maybe have been a permanent resident, want to move to citizenship, if they're trying to investigate, maybe they're here with temporary protected status and they're wondering if there's a way for them to move to a permanent legal status. Those are all the kinds of things that our program can help with.
As you know, even the Archdiocese takes use of that services. When we have priests from different parts of the world who want to come and provide services here, we go to your office and say, Lisa, help us get them settled here. Help them get their right visa. Help them get their right permission to be here.
Yes, absolutely. We have a number of foreign-born priests in the diocese, as you know very well, and as probably anybody listening to this has experienced being present in a parish that has a foreign-born priest. And there are specific rules around how priests and religious folks who want to come to the United States, the provisions they have to go through and the steps that they have to take, which has been a real challenge lately because some changes at the federal level to the way those are processed has made it more difficult for our priests to come and stay within the bounds of the law for as long as we need them. Sometimes they're now having to go back, which is complicating for everybody.
Well, and in future shows when we're talking about parish planning and staffing, and we could not do the work we do today, though, without our foreign-born priests. They're serving in dozens and dozens of our parishes.
Yeah, and they're doing a wonderful job,
Yeah,
and they're
that's
really
right.
winning the hearts of their parishioners, and it's a beautiful thing to see. It's really an excellent example of why immigration can really meet the needs of our community, right? These are things that we need. We need our priests. We need people to do this for us, and there's not enough native-born Americans stepping forward to do that work.
Absolutely right. Now, one of the things that your agency does that's connected to all this is one of my favorites, called your language services program. And I call it one of my favorites because when you visit your agency and you hear the different languages, I know the stereotype is it's like a mini United Nations. You need to wear earphones to figure out who's saying what because the different accents and languages and so forth. But you have a whole department of legal language services. Tell us what those are.
Yeah, because when we bring people into our community, we're working to make sure that they have enough English to get by, but oftentimes, in the beginning at least, they need an interpreter for many things. Once they've been here for a little while, you may have enough English to get by at the grocery store or to, navigate your job. But if somebody in your family gets sick, You got to go to the hospital. It's really important that everybody understands exactly what's going on here. Sometimes we're working with the education systems, both here in Jefferson County and around the state. You really don't want your 10-year-old to be the interpreter for his own meeting with school staff, right? He says, I'm great, and it was all the other kids' fault that I'm here today. So having that available, our program is available with in-person interpreters, which is, of course, the gold standard, but also to do phone and video interpretation. We translate written documents as well. So, for instance, we had a parish a few years ago that was planning a capital campaign. They have a very diverse group of parishioners, and so they came and got us to translate their campaign materials into 2 or 3 different languages so that everyone would be able to read and understand what it was that the parish was doing. We have customers in business, in healthcare, in education, in the legal world, pretty much anywhere where somebody needs to make sure that the people that they are trying to reach understand in very clear understanding of what's going on. So
I think I know the number. How many different languages today are on your staff that you could use?
I think today it's 35.
Wow.
So, that includes the contract interpreters. So
Okay.
most of our interpreters are working for us on contract, which means that they set their own schedules. They take appointments when it's convenient for them. We do have a lot of languages on staff, but I think of our actual employed staff, it's definitely less than 35. But it's still a pretty high number. And languages you and I never even heard of.
Yeah.
I can tell you that.
Yeah, but 35 languages. Well, you can hear that in Louisville, and you can see it, thank goodness, in the Louisville restaurant businesses, because there are so many different wonderful places. So Louisville has become more worldwide, and the Catholic Church has always been that. So there's a coming together of those things. Well, let's talk about some other work at Catholic Charities.
Absolutely.
I don't want to lose our time here. Important work that goes on. One of the ways that you do things is you actually have direct services for the poor. And I think there's 2 that come to mind for me. One is the work at the Sister Visitor Center in West Louisville, and one is the Father Jack Jones Food Pantry near Churchill Downs. Tell us about those programs.
Sure. So those are our 2 permanent food pantry locations. Sister Visitor Center is located in West Louisville at 23rd and West Market Street. For anybody who is aware of where Catholic Charities used to work in West Louisville in the St. Anthony Parish buildings, Sister Visitor Center has always been across the street on the north side of Market Street, and they're still there. We've pulled out of all the staff that used to be at St. Anthony are now with us in the East Broadway headquarters, but Sister Visitor Center has stayed where it is because its mission is to serve the people of West Louisville, and so it needs to be in the midst of West Louisville in order to do that. Sister Visitor Center Food Pantry operates 5 days a week. In addition to the food that people are able to come and get from Sister Visitor Center, there is assistance with rent, with utilities. People who live in the neighborhood can come for whatever kind of help that they need. We also operate a second food pantry. Sister Visitor Center's been around for 50 years. Our second food pantry is much newer. We started it during COVID at the request of Dare to Care because they recognized that area where our other building was on 4th Street at the Holy Name Parish Complex was really a pocket of need that was not being served by other food pantries in the area. And so we opened the Father Jack Jones Food Pantry. Father Jack Jones was a Catholic priest and the person who started Dare to Care, started the food bank for our whole community. So we thought it was an appropriate way to honor him, to name our pantry after him. And that pantry's open 2 days a week. We would love to have it open more often, but we would need more volunteers and more food. So even though it's only open 2 days as opposed to Sister Visitor Center being open 5 days a week, we go through about as much food in both locations.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot of service. Tell me about a quiet little ministry, it's not so little anymore, that's referred to as the Indigent Burial Program.
Oh, this is one of my favorites too. I think we both share a soft spot for it.
Yeah,
It's just such a really beautiful reflection of our community. This is a program that actually we do in concert with Louisville Metro, with the coroner's office, with Metro Parks. Every city in the country, every place in the country has to have a solution to what to do when somebody passes away who doesn't have friends or family to claim their body. Or maybe they do have friends and family, but those folks don't have the resources to arrange for a funeral. And some number of years ago, there was an assistant coroner, a good Catholic fella named Buddy Dumeyer, who worked as a deputy coroner and just felt like we could do a little better by people. Some other communities, have sort of mass graves even, and just very sort of impersonal. And Mr. Dumeyer felt that this was not really in keeping with the dignity of every person that he, as a good Catholic, felt people deserved. And so he reached out to his alma mater, St. X High School, and arranged for a group of student volunteers to come and serve as pallbearers for the indigent when they were being buried in the city cemetery, that they would at least be laid to rest by people who knew their name. And arrange for a little prayer service. And so over the years, this program has blossomed. Since Mr. Dumeyer retired from the coroner's office, the program has come and made its home with us at Catholic Charities. We coordinate volunteers from all of our Catholic high schools now, have what we call the Joseph of Arimathea societies. Of course, Joseph of Arimathea was the man in the Bible who gave his tomb to be used for the body of Jesus. And so all of our high schools take turns coming out and being present on the days that burials happen. We have other volunteers as well. I want to give a hat tip to the Flagey Alumni Association. They're almost always out there volunteering, which is really wonderful. But it's a beautiful reflection of how we as a community step forward to continue to lift people up and to embrace their human dignity, even at the point of death, to recognize that these are still our brothers and sisters. As one of the volunteers has said many times before, everybody's held when they come into the world, and everybody ought to be held when they leave.
Well, I know you've been there. I've been there a number of times. Archbishop Shelton's been there. There is a very moving experience. And the commitment over these years to do this regularly about some of the volunteers. And volunteers is the place I want to begin to wrap up all of your programs, from migration refugees to care for the poor to the indigent burial and many others we could talk about. Need volunteers. What can people do to help you?
Yes, absolutely. We do have so many needs for volunteers. Even I'm glad you mentioned the refugee program, because I think people might think, well, nobody knew's coming, they don't need me anymore. And that's not true. We still do need those volunteers, especially for things like our youth mentoring program. We need volunteers down at Sister Visitor Center, where volunteers walk through the pantry and help our clients shop for the food choices that are going to work best for them. We have Saturday Serves, where we arrange to have groups come in and help with bigger projects that need to get done. So anybody who is interested or needs service hours should feel free to go to the website, cclou.org, look for the volunteer page, fill out the form, and find a way, whether it's one time or a repeated opportunity, that somebody can connect with us.
Lisa, there's this past year, the excitement of a new building and opportunities, the heaviness of federal budget cuts, which limited some of your ministries and activities. How do you and your colleagues stay positive?
Wow. Well, I'll tell you, one thing that we're all doing is looking to each other and remembering that the work that we're doing is a blessing, not just to the people that we're serving, but to us. To have the opportunity to be of service is a great gift. And that's one reason that I feel so strongly about wanting our whole Catholic community to know about what we do, to take pride in the work, to support us with prayer, with money if you're able, with your time as a volunteer if you're able, because it is a gift. And remembering that the work that we're doing is, this is Christ's work in the world. This is the work of the church. This is our act of faith. And even though we are in an incredibly difficult time right now, and I feel sometimes like we just don't know from one day to the next how to plan for what's coming, we do know that there's always going to be a Catholic Charities. Whatever form that may take, we're always going to be here. I tell the staff all the time, we're just going to do the next thing that we can do. We're going to help the next people in front of us with whatever resources we have to share, and we'll worry about tomorrow when it gets here.
Live from Broadway, the corporal works of mercy, because you can see it every day, everything that
Absolutely.
You're doing. They're all right there.
Absolutely.
They're not actually. Some of them are right there, but they're all out in the community, and that's what I wonder about. where's Catholic Charities headed? I know you're always going to be there. Thank God. And thank you. But where do you think? When do you look forward? What is ahead?
We are continuing to take a hard look at lots of opportunities for us to build out new services, to expand services that we already have. As you know, we've talked about housing. It is a real through line in almost every program that we have. The folks who are coming to us have a need for safe and stable housing. We've been involved in that area in the past, helped to convert some old church buildings into residences. So we're taking a look to see if that's something we might need to get back into. Continuing to look at the issue of food security, which is just getting bigger and bigger. Grocery prices keep going up, and we're not sure what's going to be happening in terms of SNAP benefits and other opportunities that people have to access food. So taking a hard look at that and trying to see how we can be more present in more places to help more people. Senior service is another area that we're looking at hard. We know our population is aging, and taking a look to see what's already being done in the community, where are some gaps, and are there places that our skills would make a good fit. So, we're taking a look always to see how we can be of better service to the people in the community.
It can leave me breathless. There's so much more work to do.
There's always more work to do.
And we didn't touch on your community gardens, the programs you do for the nursing home ombudsman work, or the work you're doing downstate, or the Catholic social teachings in the parishes. There's lots more work Catholic Charities does, and it wouldn't happen without good leadership. So we thank you, Lisa.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for joining us in this program, and thanks to our viewers and listeners for tuning in. Keep Catholic Charities in your mind, in your hearts, and in your donations. Thanks for being with us. See you again next month.